Is A&W really the healthier fast food choice in Canada? What if I told you that the real food campaign you've been trusting might not tell the whole story? The teen burger you grabbed for lunch can still pack around 500 calories, a hefty dose of fat, and close to a gram of sodium in a single sandwich. A serious chunk of what most adults should be eating in an entire day. The root beer float you think is a harmless treat delivers roughly 2 full candy bars worth of sugar in one go. And former employees have admitted to practices behind the counter that would at least make you think twice about what fresh really means. Behind the nostalgic branding and the promise of hormone-free beef, something else is hiding in plain sight. Today, we're pulling back the orange and brown striped curtain to expose what you're really consuming. What you're about to hear might change how you look at Canada's favorite root beer stand forever. Let's dive in. Let's start with A&W's crown achievement, their famous hormone-free, steroid-free beef. They've built their entire marketing campaign around it. Raised without hormones or steroids, it sounds wholesome, natural, better for you. And it is different, but not in the way you might think. Here's what A&W doesn't advertise as loudly. Hormone-free doesn't mean antibiotic-free. Their beef guarantee is about growth hormones and steroids. Like most of the industry, cattle can still be treated with antibiotics if they get sick, and A&W sources from multiple suppliers to meet that demand. The raising standards are better in some ways, but it doesn't magically turn the end product into health food. And that's the bigger issue. Hormone-free beef doesn't make the burger itself healthy. A teen burger contains around 500 calories, mid-20s grams of fat, and roughly 900 milligrams of sodium. That's well over half of a sensible daily sodium target if you're aiming for around 1,500 milligrams in just one item before you add fries, sauce, or a drink. A nutritionist I spoke with basically compared it to putting an organic sticker on a candy bar. You can upgrade one ingredient, but if the whole thing is still loaded with saturated fat, salt, and refined carbs, it's not suddenly a wellness food. The beef quality may be better on paper, but the overall nutritional profile is still a problem. You're not eating healthier, you're eating better marketed. A&W built their empire on root beer. It's literally in the name. Walk into any location and you'll see the old-fashioned frosted mugs, the retro signage, the promise of that classic taste. It feels like Americana, or in Canada's case, Canadiana, at its finest. But that root beer you're drinking, let's talk about what's actually in it. A typical medium A&W root beer in Canada comes in around 50 to 60 grams of sugar. That's roughly 12 to 15 teaspoons. To put that in perspective, the World Health Organization recommends adults keep added sugar to about 25 grams per day for optimal health. One drink can easily double that strict limit by itself. Check the ingredients list on A&W Canada's website and you'll see cane sugar, caramel color, and sodium benzoate. That caramel coloring, a class 4 caramel, is created through a process that can produce 4-methylimidazole, a compound California flags as a possible carcinogen at high intakes. Regulators in Canada say the levels used are within safety limits, and technically, they're right. But ask yourself this, is a daily habit of that much sugary colored soda really something you want to build? And if you're thinking, I'll just get a root beer float instead, that's not a free pass either. A regular root beer float at A&W contains around the mid-50 grams of sugar. In plain English, that's about 2 Snickers bars worth of sugar in one dessert drink hybrid. A&W heavily promotes their hand-breaded chicken products. The language suggests fresh chicken, breaded by human hands in the back of the restaurant, just like grandma used to make. The reality? That's not quite how it always works. According to former employees who've shared their experiences online, at least in some Canadian locations, the chicken arrives already breaded and frozen, and the hand part mostly refers to staff handling and dropping the pieces into the fryer. Because hand-breaded isn't a regulated term, any process with a bit of human involvement can technically qualify, even if the real breading work happened in a factory. Now look at what you're actually eating. A double chicken buddy burger, often marketed as a simpler, lighter option, comes in at around 480 calories and just over 1,000 milligrams of sodium. That's in the same ballpark as, and in some cases slightly higher than, the sodium in a McDonald's Big Mac. Not exactly a light choice for such a small sandwich. The chubby chicken sandwich, more like around 490 calories, about 27 grams of fat, and roughly 1,190 milligrams of sodium, that's close to 80% of a reasonable daily sodium target packed into one chicken burger. A food researcher at a Canadian university summed up the problem. Terms like hand-breaded are marketing language, not a standardized preparation method. You might picture a cook dunking raw chicken into a bowl of flour on site. In reality, You're often paying premium prices for industrially prepared, deep-fried chicken that's still extremely high in fat and salt. You're paying for what feels like premium preparation, but the nutritional profile tells a very different story. A&W entered the breakfast game later than most fast food chains, but they came in swinging with promises of real eggs and quality ingredients. Let's examine what real means in this context, and what those breakfasts actually do to your day. The bacon and egger, one of their most popular breakfast items, contains around 380 calories, 21 grams of fat, and roughly 730 milligrams of sodium when it's served on an English muffin. Swap to a bigger bun with cheese and you can push that higher, but it's still not a light start. Pair it with a hash brown and a small root beer, and you're now looking at roughly 700 to 900 calories and about 1,000 to 1,100 milligrams of sodium before 9 a.m., easily 2/3 or more of an ideal daily salt target in a single breakfast. There's also some nuance behind the real eggs promise. A&W advertises freshly cracked eggs, and many locations do crack eggs onto the grill. But like other fast food chains, there are reports from former staff that some restaurants lean more on pre-cooked or liquid egg products for certain formats, depending on equipment and volume. The company doesn't spell out those behind-the-scenes differences at the counter. The sausage in their breakfast sandwiches is another issue. A single pork sausage patty can be in the neighborhood of 230 to 240 calories and roughly 500 to 600 milligrams of sodium on its own. That's the kind of salt you'd expect from a large order of fries, squeezed into one small disc of meat. A Canadian cardiologist I spoke with put it bluntly, starting your day with around a gram of sodium and a lot of saturated fat might be fine as an occasional indulgence, but as a routine breakfast, it sets you up for blood pressure spikes, water retention, and long-term cardiovascular stress. The occasional bacon and egger won't doom you, but building your mornings around them is a very different story. In recent years, A&W introduced sweet potato fries as a healthier alternative to regular fries. The marketing worked brilliantly. Customers flocked to them believing they were making a better choice. Here's the truth. A&W's sweet potato fries contain more calories and nearly the same amount of fat as their regular fries. A regular fries, about 420 calories and 21 grams of fat. The difference is negligible, but there's more. Sweet potatoes are naturally nutritious, they're high in fiber, vitamin A, and antioxidants, but once they're deep fried in oil and coated with salt, most of those benefits disappear. What you're left with is a starchy fried product that's nearly identical to regular fries in terms of nutrition. A dietitian I consulted explained, the sweet potato fries at A&W aren't healthier, they're just different. The deep frying process negates most nutritional advantages. It's a perfect example of health washing, making a product seem healthier through marketing when the nutritional reality doesn't support the claim. You're paying 50 to 75 cents more for what amounts to the same nutritional damage. Let's talk about the elephant in the room: sodium. A&W has a serious sodium problem across nearly every menu item, and based on nutritional data available at the time of making this video, it's often worse than you'd expect for the size of the meal. Take the classic burgers. A mama burger, the smaller, basic burger, sits around 730 to 800 milligrams of sodium depending on whether you add cheese. Step up to something like a bacon and cheese mozza-style burger, and you're now in the 1,400 to 1,600 milligram range, depending on the exact build. The Grandpa Burger, a triple patty monster with cheese, still clocks around 1,100 to 1,200 milligrams of sodium on its own. Even items you'd think are lighter options are loaded with salt. A grilled chicken sandwich can easily land around 800 to 900 milligrams of sodium once you include the bun and sauce. A plain small cheeseburger is typically in the 700 to 800 milligram range. And the healthier plant-based option, A&W's Beyond Style Veggie Burger, carries around 1,100 milligrams of sodium, basically as much salt as one of their bigger beef burgers. Why does this matter? Health Canada and the Heart and Stroke Foundation have repeatedly warned that excessive sodium intake is directly linked to high blood pressure, heart disease, and stroke, some of the leading causes of death in Canada. The Canadian Cardiovascular Society recommends most adults aim for around 2,000 milligrams of sodium per day or less. A single A&W combo can burn through that in one shot. Pair a salty burger in the 1,400 to 1,600 milligram range with fries and a drink, and you're at or over 2,000 milligrams of sodium in a single meal. One cardiologist I spoke with described it as a public health problem disguised as convenience food. We're seeing younger and younger patients with hypertension, and fast food loaded with salt is a big part of that picture. A&W loves to pile on the cheese and bacon, It's their signature move. Almost every burger comes with at least one slice of cheese, and many signature burgers include bacon. Let's talk about what that really means for your health. At A&W Canada, a slice of cheddar cheese adds around 80 calories, about 7 grams of fat, and a modest bump in sodium to your burger. That might not sound like much, but stack a couple of cheese slices across your meal and you've quietly added the equivalent of a small extra burger's worth of calories and fat. Add bacon, and things escalate fast. 2 strips of bacon add roughly 80 calories, about 7 grams of fat, and a couple of 100 milligrams of sodium. That's a noticeable hit for something that barely makes a dent in your hunger. The Uncle Burger, which features 2 beef patties, cheddar, and bacon, comes in at about 760 calories, 48 grams of fat, and roughly 1,160 milligrams of sodium. That's still a huge amount of salt and fat in a single sandwich, even though it's not quite the nutritional apocalypse some people imagine. Where it gets really worrying is the type of fat. That burger delivers over 20 grams of saturated fat, more than an entire day's recommended limit for most adults. A nutrition researcher I spoke with put it this way: when you combine high saturated fat with a lot of sodium and a refined white bun, you're creating a perfect storm for metabolic problems. An Uncle Burger once in a while won't kill you. Build it into your weekly routine though, and you're stacking the deck for high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and long-term heart issues. Perhaps the most troubling aspect of A&W's menu is what they're feeding children. The kids' meals are marketed as fun, convenient options for families. But look at the nutritional breakdown. A kid's cheeseburger combo with fries and root beer contains approximately 730 calories, 28 grams of fat, and 1,090 milligrams of sodium. For a child aged 4 to 8, that's roughly half their entire daily calorie needs and nearly all their sodium limit in one meal. The kids' chicken strips combo, even worse, around 780 calories, 33 grams of fat, and over 1,200 milligrams of sodium. And that root beer we discussed earlier, that means children are consuming 30 to 40 grams of sugar with their meal, more added sugar than they should have in an entire day, according to the American Heart Association and Canadian Pediatric Society guidelines available at the time of this recording. A pediatric nutritionist I interviewed was blunt: we're setting children up for obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease before they even reach adolescence. These aren't treats anymore when they're consumed regularly. They're dietary habits that will follow these kids into adulthood. A&W positions itself as a premium fast food option. They charge more than McDonald's, more than Burger King, and often more than Wendy's. The implied message: you're paying for quality. But are you really getting value? A teen burger by itself will often cost a few dollars more than a Big Mac, depending on where you live. You can easily be paying a 25 to 35% premium for a similar sized sandwich. You're told that premium goes into better ingredients like hormone-free beef. As we've already seen, that doesn't change the fact that the burger is still high in salt, fat, and calories. The root beer is similar. You can buy a 2-liter bottle of A&W root beer at the grocery store for maybe $2 to $3. At the restaurant, a medium fountain root beer can be 3 to 5 times more expensive per ounce once you do the math. That markup is standard in fast food, but it really shows you how much you're paying for the ambiance and the frosted mug, not the actual liquid in it. And then there's the cost you don't see on the receipt. The real price of making fast food a regular habit isn't measured only in dollars at the till. It's measured in higher risk of chronic disease, more doctor's visits, medications, and lost energy and productivity over time. Some health economists estimate that over decades, the extra healthcare and indirect costs tied to a consistently poor diet can run into the tens of thousands of dollars. That teen burger might show up as, say, $7 or $8 on the menu board. If it becomes part of your weekly routine, the true cost over the long run can be a lot higher than that. So what have we uncovered today? That A&W's hormone-free beef claim, while technically true, masks the bigger nutritional disaster on your plate. That their hand-breaded chicken isn't what you think. That their root beer contains alarming amounts of sugar and questionable ingredients. That nearly every item on their menu delivers dangerous levels of sodium. That their healthier alternatives, like sweet potato fries, are just more expensive versions of the same problem. None of this means you can never enjoy an A&W burger again, but it does mean you should understand what you're really consuming. The marketing says real food. The nutritional data available as of the time we're making this video tells a very different story. A&W has built its brand on nostalgia, on promises of quality, on the image of being better than other fast food chains. But behind that carefully crafted image is a menu loaded with excessive sodium, saturated fat, and sugar, dressed up in better marketing than their competitors. So the next time you're tempted to pull into that A&W drive-thru, remember, you're not just buying a burger, you're buying into an illusion. And after today, you might never look at that orange and brown logo the same way again. Knowledge is power. Now you know what to avoid, or at least how to make an informed choice.